My guest today is Kimberly Amy, the founder of Above Reproach Academy, which she launched in May of 2021. Above Reproach Academy is a private umbrella school, a homeschool co op, an educational resource center located in Spring Hill, Florida, that serves homeschoolers, private school students, public school students, and families throughout the state. She currently has over 100 students in grades sort of pre-K, 4-year-olds, all the way up through 12th grade. So, Kimberly, Amy, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you, Kerry. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. I'm so excited to hear your story and especially learn more about your incredible growth in terms of students served since the spring of 2021. But let's start a little bit with your background story, Kimberly. You were a private school teacher, a homeschool parent who used a variety of different methods while you were homeschooling your own children. Tell us a little bit about your pathway into education before education entrepreneurship.
So originally, it was myself and my two older children who are much older now. Uh, and one of my goals was I wanted to be able to be home with my oldest daughter and my son when they were out of school and on the weekends. And I was in restaurant management at the time and going through school full time. And I decided the only way that that was possible and to be involved in their lives was if I jumped into this education field. And so I worked towards getting my degree in education, ended up switching over to getting a degree in history because of the timeline, if I'm honest. So, and was able to secure a position teaching by the time my daughter entered middle school. So I took her and my son into that same private school with me.
And then you, at some point, shifted to homeschooling. Tell us a little bit what the motivation was for that.
So after I got into that, I remarried and my husband and I had another child, but in between that we adopted a third child. And I'm sorry, right now I have children in my facility, so they're coming to see me as they're saying goodbye. So
Just keeping it real.
yes, it is as real as it gets. What do you need, honey? Yes, you may. Thank you for asking. So so yes, keeping it real. We have them in and out all day long. It's a very non-traditional place. But anyway, once we adopted, we realized that because she came out of the foster care system, we realized that one, our hands were tied. We weren't allowed to homeschool with her. So we had her in a private school, but it just wasn't working for her. And we created a kind of like a hybrid type education for her, one that the agencies allowed us to utilize, but we still were able to educate her at home a little bit. And then we found another program for my younger two children that we eventually added to the family that just worked better. And with my older two, we're in the private school setting. They did okay, but it still wasn't exactly what I was looking for. And so we jumped into virtual school. I had one that graduated out of our Florida virtual school. I had another one that graduated out of the county virtual school. And then the adopted one who graduated out of the private school that we created this hybrid homeschool. I call it an adventure because it was that year. We actually held a graduation for her and she was the only one that went through the ceremony, but it was awesome. And then my other one graduated from traditional homeschool, and now my last one is part of my private umbrella school.
Just so great. I mean, you've really seen it all, Kimberly. So, what was leading you to create Above Reproach Academy? What was sort of the origin story for that?
So when I was leading the support group in the area, I noticed that co-ops, they were awesome. We were a part of a co-op and they tended to be more of a, in our area, more enrichment activity, more socialization. And I was one of those moms that was like, if I'm going to leave my house, I needed to have more behind it. And not to say that that wasn't valuable, it is valuable, but I wanted more value. Um, so I started thinking, like, okay, well, if it's not here, then I just need to create it. And if I'm the one, if I'm sitting here thinking, I want more, I want something else, and I want it to look different. I didn't want it just one day a week. I didn't want to have to go be there at 9 o'clock in the morning and stay until 3 o'clock. And I was like, well, what if I had one where people could just take what they wanted? They didn't have to volunteer to teach anything. They could bring their child, they could have a class, and then they could leave. And then I was like, well, what if we incorporate even more? What if we don't have just your core academics, but we introduce dance, or we introduce esports, or we have just different classes that you don't typically see all compiled together. And so that's kind of how it morphed. And I was like, well, let's just try it. And I had a friend who got a building, and she's like, well, if you want to use this space for now, I was like, sure. And so we put children in all different spaces in there, held dance, did all kinds of things.
And
And
that
then
was in May of 2021.
May of 21 was the inception of the idea. And then we did
Okay.
the planning, and we kicked off that fall of 2021.
Got it. Okay. And you said you started with about 60 students kind of out of the gate.
Yes.
Were those, homeschoolers who you knew from the community, or is there just a lot of pent-up demand for this? What was happening?
So our county, I have to say, Hernando County is where this is in Florida. We have a huge homeschool community. And there is a lot of support. So with Home Circle, that was the group that I was chairing at the time. So I did have probably a leg up, if I'm honest. Like I had a whole group of people that I knew, and I was able to share that with them. And so that's probably why I had success right out of the gate with that. And I knew that they had gotten to know me as I was leading that group. And so there's that element of trust. So they were okay, just trying something different out. Like, so I was lucky in that aspect. And so yeah, we just kind of advertised it out there and said, hey, this is what we're doing. It's not connected to the support group.
Hmm.
But come on out, try it out, see if you like it. And it may be for you, but it may not. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about how it works, because it sounds like Above Reproach Academy has sort of it's multifaceted, has sort of different programs, this private umbrella school, the homeschool co-op, and then this educational resource center. What are each of those components, and how do they serve families?
Okay, so all right, and I get excited, so you'll have to just like shut me up if I start talking too much. But I'll start with the private umbrella school. I started that in May 2021, right alongside of the co-op. And I've always told people they're separate entities operating under the same name. Um, I did that, and that I felt a very strong need to create a safe place for homeschoolers to land. That is a very specific feeling that I had, and I'm slowly starting to see why I had that thought. So that's why I created it. I never pushed the umbrella school. I still don't push the umbrella school, but it's there for those who need it. Um, and especially with some of the new things that have come through in Florida, the umbrella school almost feels like it could possibly be obsolete. But I'll sidetrack. So I'll go back to what you were saying. And
Yeah, or maybe now or at some point
okay.
explain for those who aren't aware what an umbrella school is, because I know in Florida there are several options, in other states as well. But what is that?
Okay, so an umbrella school, uh, basically a homeschooler can enroll with an umbrella school instead of enrolling with their county in Florida. So most homeschoolers in the state of Florida, you have to file a letter of intent with your county to let them know you're going to homeschool. While Floridians have the option of, instead of enrolling with with the county, they can enroll with an umbrella school. Now, umbrella schools in Florida, for all intents and purposes, are private schools. We are registered with the Department of Education. And now this is where it gets tricky, and people don't understand this in Florida. Like I explain this a lot. So with a private school, none of our private schools in Florida are overseen by the Department of Education, other than a few laws that we have to abide by, like keeping a file and keeping attendance. And the file has certain paperwork that we have to have. Other than that, there is no oversight in the state of Florida for private schools. That includes umbrella schools. Furthermore, Department of Education does not accredit private schools in the state of Florida. So when someone says, "Are you accredited?" it really doesn't matter. And I hate to say that, because some people are like, "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" But it doesn't, because the Department of Education does not accredit any private school, any, regardless of how great or how not great. Furthermore, accrediting agencies, they are not recognized by the Department of Education in the state of Florida. So even having that insignia on your website that says you're accredited to the Department of Education, it's not to say it doesn't matter, because there's hard work that goes into getting accreditation. So I want to be really careful with that. But if there isn't any oversight where the Department of Education is concerned. They view a private umbrella school the same way they view a private school. So your brick and mortar, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, like whatever the hours are for the school, is the same thing in their eyes as an umbrella school. The difference is that it's understood that an umbrella school is basically partnering with parents. The umbrella school sets the parameters of what is acceptable for their students in their school. Some umbrella schools might say you have to use this curriculum, or you have to submit your curriculum so we can approve it, or they might have different guidelines to how you report something. Some of them might require you to take a standardized test, and a lot of that coincides with the accreditation that they may have received from whichever accrediting agency they used. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Okay, so you have the co-op, then you have the umbrella school, and then you have the resource center. And
Yes.
what is that?
Okay. So, well, I'll go back. The co-op, I call it a hybrid co-op, especially right now in Florida with the new scholarships that have come out for homeschoolers. We have the PEP scholarship, and it allows homeschoolers to take advantage of things that they might not necessarily been able to afford in the past. So my hybrid co-op offers a home education program, because with that PEP scholarship, students are not allowed to be enrolled in a private umbrella school, nor are they enrolled with the county anymore. They are enrolled with the scholarship funding organization that issues the PEP. So by registering my hybrid co-op with the Step Up or scholarship funding organization, students that have that PEP are able to use me as a direct provider. So we keep our hybrid co-op separate from the other things that we are doing, so that they can utilize the home education program.
And then are
Resource,
they,
yeah,
sorry, Kimberly,
no, go
are
ahead.
they able to, so that they use the PEP scholarship for the co-op? For the umbrella school, are they able to use the other school choice programs, the Universal ESA, or no?
So technically speaking, they could use that. However, I do not register with that side of the scholarships, because I know that there's a time and a place for standardized tests for some people, but for me, it just doesn't align with my own personal philosophy in education. So in order for me to accept some of those scholarships, then I would have to give or I would have to require a standardized test. And with some of the students that I serve, I just don't feel it's to their benefit that I do that. So I opt out of those. So
Mhm.
my umbrella school, I keep it very low tuition, so that scholarships typically aren't, and they're not looking for that.
Mhm.
And I work with them if they need help with their curriculum and stuff. It's for that portion, it's not about the finances. I just can't look at these children and say, you have to take a test, when half of them are doing this because the anxiety of having to test is what put them in that position to begin with.
Right.
So with PEP, it was hard for me, because I was like, oh, because PEP, one of the requirements is they have to take a standardized test at the end of the year. these homeschool students.
Mhm.
And it was very difficult for me, but I had to recognize the fact that, well, it's not me in my homeschool program that's requiring this test. That's the scholarship funding organization that's requiring it.
Yeah.
And if the parents opt into that, then that's a choice they're making for their children. It's not a choice I'm mandating.
Right. And so what percentage of your co-op students then are participating through PEP?
I so I had looked, and then I had some that said, "Oh no, I'm PEP," and I thought they were self. So I would say about 90 to 95% of my students are PEP students.
Wow. Okay.
And if they're not, I have some that are UA, which is the Unique Abilities, used to be
Hmm.
Gardner.
Hmm.
That one I can utilize for the homeschool program.
Hmm. Great. So it's really making programs like yours more accessible to families. And then the resource center.
So resource wise, it's more of a, I'm just available to parents.
Mm,
Um, if they, you don't have to choose my program. I've had many meetings where just come on in, we'll talk about it. Let's find the best path. And then I set them on the path. And I think part of that is being tied into the community like I was before I stepped down from Home Circle. It allowed me to know like different co-ops in the area, different things that are available to them, and help them find the fit for them, because I'm not going to be everybody's fit, and that's okay. And I tell them, like, you can come in and talk to me and we can still figure it out, and you don't have to say yes, I want your program. You could say, oh my gosh, but that sounds better. I have some that they do a forestry school. You won't catch me outside all day, not in Florida. But for some, that is awesome. And I have parents who do it, and I'm like, this is a great fit for your child. It's about what's best for your children.
right.
So
So
that's
you
the resources. It's just
got it.
partnering them with people.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And clearly so many people love it because you are growing rapidly now to over 100 learners since the fall of 2021. What is attracting families to your program, especially those that have joined over the past couple of years?
So in Florida, we've had a huge amount of people leaving the public school system. And I think they get caught in what I call the in between, where, okay, we're going to homeschool, but we're not quite sure what we want to do. And I think that we serve a big majority of that community because we're there to help them through the homeschooling aspect, but still give them what they feel that they're just not ready to give their children themselves. And so we just partner with those parents, and we kind of, I hate to say teach them, but we model how to homeschool. And because it's a partnership, and explaining to them, okay, so they'll come to us for this, we'll give them enrichment activities, you'll work with them on those enrichment activities. Those are most of what are coming in. And then I still have a lot of my families that were there day one who have gone with me from space to space, and we've utilized different rooms. Someone said, hey, you can use this. And I used to joke and say, okay, we're at this campus today. And then this class, we even have a gym that lets us use their studio for dance classes. And then they partner with us and offer boxing and strength training. And so we offer things that are a little bit out of the box.
Yeah.
But it works.
And you have your own designated space that you've been
Yes.
in since January. So I guess how often are most families, coming to your program? Could they come 5 days a week if they wanted? Are most coming a day or two here and there? What is the typical composition?
So, again, we do it a little differently, because there's a huge micro school movement, and it's phenomenal for those who want that. But um, for us, that model, it really doesn't fit what we're doing. So, for instance, my middle schoolers and high schoolers come to me on Monday and Wednesday. And Monday, they'll be with me, and we call this more of a traditional style. They come in and we have our classes back to back. They get their enrichment activities. They have their extracurriculars after those core academics. They'll all have lunch together. And then Wednesday, when they come back, the teachers aren't here. It's just me and them. and they know what they need to do. And I have older students tutoring younger students and helping with different projects, and they're working on their enrichment activities. They're getting any assistance that they need. They're It's kind of fun because I like to like give them creative freedom in their education, and that's a newer concept in our area. So I might say like, hey, I really need a t-shirt for our field trips when kids go on field trips. Do you think you could put something together for me? And to watch them go from, okay, so what do I need to have on it? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to put on it? And like watching their minds like brighten and think, wait a minute, you mean we can do what we want? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, what are the things you have to have? I said, well, I'm attached to my colors. So if you can keep my colors, like everything else, we can talk about it. And they it's fun watching them realize that they can take control of their education, and that there's other ways to learn outside of the confines of that traditional setting. And the traditional setting has its place for some people, but I like seeing them transition from go back and forth and decide what's best for them. And then my elementary students come 1 day a week, and they'll have more of a traditional style. It's what parents are used to in our area. um, but next year we'll probably grow it to be a 2 day and introduce them. I call it like the free form day. So introduce them to that concept as well, where they're more in charge of their education. The children are responsible for their choices that they're making. And so that's kind of how we do it. I do have a mom's morning out that is ages 4 to 6, and it's more like we're going to introduce them to phonics and reading and all of those things that um, numbers and science and weather and social studies and talking about our state and all of those things that parents want. But we give some freedom for the children to figure out like, well, how do we want to learn this? So it's a little different.
Yeah.
And but those young ones, they come twice a week. They come in the morning, but my elementary ages come 1 day, and we just added a second day for a whole other set of children because we outgrew the space for that
Amazing.
day.
And then for the older ones, it sounds like they're coming Monday and Wednesday for enrichment. So what are they doing for academics?
So for academics, we do what we call the core four. And so we will have basically their math, their science, their English, their history. And like English might be a little different. For instance, I teach their English and it's a Hunger Games theme. We're using the Hunger Games book, and that's just because it's fun. And for history, we're doing a prove it, teaching them to go to primary sources to find out like what really happened. And science, it's more hands-on and less of having to be in a book all the time, and applying it's more applicable to them. So they do those core four classes, and then they will have their electives surrounding that on like say Monday. So they might leave and go to the gym and do their strength training and then go to boxing. I have some that might take art. I have a piano teacher here. We have Spanish classes happening, sewing, culinary classes. There's just different things happening. And Wednesday, that's more what we call their elective day. And so they can fit in these electives in between being with their friends and collaborating and working on projects together. So
And is it a drop-off program? Are parents expected to stay to help with the teaching? How does that work?
no, there are no expectations on the parents. Our goal is to teach children to be responsible for their learning and their education. And that's something with my parents. I'm like, it's okay if he doesn't do, his assignment with his peers like he said he was going to, like those consequences are on him. Those aren't a reflection of you. Like he's got to learn how to take responsibility.
Mm.
And they do. My middle school, high school, they're dropped off and they're with me. And then I know like if they call it study hour. Wednesday is all study hour. It's whatever they want to do Wednesday. So, and then my elementary, if they're here for consecutive classes, they can be dropped off. But if it's a one class, I ask parents to stay, because they're going to leave. We don't offer childcare of any sort. So it's like they have a purpose for being here. And once the purpose is finished, well, then it's time to go because the next person comes in and wants to utilize that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what is the cost structure like? It sounds like the vast majority of your families are able to attend with tuition assistance from one of the state school choice programs. What is sort of the sticker price for your program?
So the sticker price is shockingly low in the grand scheme of things. And as I've been told by many, and unfortunately, it'll probably have to go up to help to take care of everything that we do within the building. But for instance, my core 4 classes, we did the drop off program and we came in at $40 a week
Hmm.
for that. And so I think it came out, we do 14 weeks in our semester. I don't have classes on Fridays. I'm a big advocate for a 3-day weekend. So, and I stress that with my students, like, just do what you have to do to be done before Thursday afternoon rolls around. Like, that's on you. And you should have time to be with your family all weekend long and just enjoy it and not have somebody asking you, did you get this done? Did you do this? But anyway, it's a 4-day week, 2 days here, $40 a week for the middle school and high school. And so it equates about 560, and that's per semester. So
And how is that? I mean, you're a small business owner. Is that financially sustainable for you as a founder? Are you able to take a salary? How does that look?
so that's where I said, yes, it's going to
Yeah.
have to go up because when we first did it, we didn't know if we were going to be direct providers for PEP. And
Hmm.
I didn't want families that only had PEP to feel like, okay, I can't afford this out of pocket and wait for reimbursement. So I wanted to make it affordable enough for them to come in and feel like, okay, if I have to wait for reimbursement, I can handle that. So that was the primary reason for doing that. Um, I tend to allow my elective teachers to choose. Put the value on their class, so to speak, like how much do you want to make?
Hmm.
And then I allow them to assign the value because it's their time and it's their class. And so that's how the elective classes are priced. I've like the gym, they do $25 a week and they get 2 lessons with a personal trainer. Plus they can come into the gym anytime within the course of the week, which is a phenomenal deal for a gym. So, but that's going forward, we will have to change it in order to be able to support having more teachers
Yeah.
and having a better salary for the teachers. There's a lot of love that's gone into this place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's, something I commonly hear folks say as well. You're eager to start this as a passion project, but to make sure that it's financially sustainable, at some point you have to have a pathway to earning a
Yes.
salary as a founder and paying teachers, what they deserve and so on. So it sort of shows your next stage of entrepreneurial maturity, I suppose, as this organization grows and
Yes.
becomes even more successful. So, Kimberly, you've been in the homeschooling world for a number of years. What are you seeing are some of the big changes since you started as a homeschool mom and now, serving so many homeschoolers in your area? What have been some of the trends you've noticed?
I think some of the bigger changes that I've noticed, there was the traditional cliche of homeschooling, if I must, where most people thought it was just one certain group of people that were homeschooling, and then they had like they thought that we were the otter group, like we were a little out there. I don't think they're too far. Like we're still like we think out there a little bit differently. I embrace that completely. Um, but what I'm noticing now is more and more people are leaving that traditional setting and they're coming from all different walks of life. Homeschoolers don't look the same as they did pre-COVID. They just don't. Um,
Why is that, do you think?
I think I think the pandemic being out of the public school system for however long that they had to be out, parents saw that having their children at home, um, and I want to be really clear with that. Like something I tell parents, Homeschooling through COVID and doing school at home online was not homeschooling. That was just doing public school online. And that's a very different lifestyle from what a homeschool family is used to. We're big advocates for learning doesn't end. It's a lifestyle of education. And that's what we try to create, that partnership with parents to create that lifestyle of education. So I have families coming to me because they were used to the model of schooling at home online, and introducing them to this world of homeschooling that is more hands-on. You can go to the beach and have a lesson, teaching them that that's okay, that you don't have to sit in front of a computer all day to do school. Does it work for some people? Absolutely, it works for some. There are some who would rather sit on a computer all day, and to each their own. But I'm noticing that as they leave that system and as they gain that freedom in education and they break away from that, oh, this is not what it's supposed to look like. We can actually do these different. I'm starting to see more and more people do that.
Huh.
And I'm starting to see them kind of, especially if you're looking like at support groups where so home, and I go back to Home Circle because it was such a big group, and we're talking over 300 families were part of that group.
Mm.
um and if you do that, like I would say 300 families on an average, if you say there were four, but most of us know homeschool families tend to be a little larger for whatever reason. But that you're looking at a minimum of 1,200 people. So you take that and you're used to one way. I would say it was the 80s and 90s mentality of what homeschooling was. That it doesn't exist anymore because that 80s and 90s, it's been spread out, and the
Yeah.
2000s are all pushed into that. And so there's all
Yeah.
different thoughts.
Yeah.
It's not all from the same religious backgrounds anymore. It's not all from the same educational philosophy anymore. They're
Yeah.
not all still using the same curriculums anymore. The curriculum selection alone is mind-blowing right now. And teaching them that you don't have to stick with just one.
Yeah.
You don't have to have one curriculum.
Yeah.
You could use five. And if one doesn't work, be okay with saying, you know what, this doesn't work, throw it out and get something else.
And
Find what
each
works for you.
a different curriculum for each child too.
Yes, for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And there are some, if someone says, "Oh, it's the best I've ever done," and I'm like, "Yeah, I did it and it was horrible for me." Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing that makes it wonderful? But
Mhm.
just I, I'm just seeing a totally different landscape in homeschoolers in Florida. They're from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different religions. Um, and I want to say it's probably an adjustment for homeschoolers too, traditional homeschoolers, because you're opening a door to something that you're not used to interacting with. You're used to being with people that are extremely like-minded. And
Mhm.
now it's like you open that door and it's all different thought processes. And it's pretty awesome to watch. It's kind of neat. I like it, but
Yeah. So what do you think the future holds then, Kimberly? Where is the momentum going? Do you feel like it's plateauing? Is it accelerating? What are some of your predictions for the next 5 or 10 years?
I don't think it has a choice. I think it has to accelerate. As we if we grow, if well, and we will, and we grow as individuals, our family sizes grow, more people see how much freedom there is in home education and that it doesn't replicate what people thought it was.
Mm.
And now they're seeing that it's a totally different vision than what they had in mind. And it isn't some stoic traditional, like sit at your table at 8 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock and break for lunch. They're realizing there's so much more freedom in it and that they can cater to their children and help their children grow into successful adults, because that's our goal. We're not raising like perpetual children, we're raising future adults. And so when we start looking at what they can do and their interest, and as homeschoolers they can start to see, oh wow, I can feed into that. Like I can start to focus in where they're interested. So it's no longer you have to do this, this, and this to follow a certain guideline. You can actually introduce them to things that interest them earlier. And so I see a lot of parents that are like, you mean so I can do this? And if they like cars, I'm like, talk to your mechanics, see if you'll do an internship. Like there's all different kinds of things that you can do. And I think it's gonna grow. Um, I I think with growth, though, I think we need to use caution. Um, because the last thing we want to do is to lose all the footholds we've made as homeschoolers. There's a lot of things that we have accomplished as homeschoolers, a lot of freedoms that we enjoy. And I think it's important that we stay ahead of that growth to make sure that we don't go back to the 1980s where people were hiding in their cars and pretending to drop their kids off at school. Like without I know that's like touchy. But I think we need to, as homeschoolers, use some caution as it grows. Make sure that, and this is part of why I named it Above Reproach. It's a reminder to me to stay above reproach. Like
Mm.
I think that we need to make sure that we don't give anyone an opportunity to point a finger and say, nope, they're not educating. Nope, they're not doing what is best for the children. As you know, if those children were given to us, like those are who we were entrusted with, then innately, I think we know what's best for them. We need to make sure that we're able to continue to advocate and fight for our children to give them what's best for them.
Completely agree. And I think you're right that we have to, always be vigilant, stay ahead of any efforts to impose additional regulations or constraints, especially on homeschoolers. I think we can take some solace in new research that was recently published by Angela Watson at the Johns Hopkins University Homeschool Hub, where she found that even though homeschooling numbers have grown significantly over the past couple of decades and school choice programs have expanded rapidly in many states, homeschooling itself has become more deregulated in that time. So hopefully past is prologue, but we have to, again, always be aware and
Yes.
be ready to fight back, push back on any efforts to
Yes.
curb homeschooling freedoms. Yeah.
I would
No.
agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think especially right now with Florida and the having this new scholarship, um being able to staying vigilant, staying on top of that, making sure that it truly is what's best for our children. And so far it has been a great blessing to many families, and I'm really glad that they have the opportunities to do things that they might not have done before. It's been great for our program, but it's even greater to have all of those kids in our program. So I think just being mindful, being
Mhm.
watchful.
Yes, for sure. So, Kimberly, if my listeners and viewers want to find out more about Above Reproach Academy and connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
They can go to my website, which is just abovereproachacademy.com. I'm also on Facebook. I probably should have other social media, and I do. It's just not good. I'm just not good with it.
You're
Instagram, I know.
busy.
I was
You're busy running a program.
So,
Yeah,
but Above Reproach Academy, there's a public page. I keep a private group for my families. But I'm the one who answers questions. If they message me, I'm the one who answers my emails, and that's abovereproachacademy@gmail.com. So it's super simple. And they can, if they message through the website, they can reach me there too. That's
terrific. Well, it's been wonderful talking with you. I'm thrilled to hear about all your success. I look forward to following your continued growth and impact the families in your area. And Kimberly, Amy, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you for having me.